I'm trying to memorize The Triumph of Life, The King and I, Shelley and I. Swift as a spirit, hasting to his task of glory and of good, the sun sprang forth, rejoicing in his glory, and the mask of darkness fell from the awakened earth. The flameless altars of the mountain snows, the smokeless, the smokeless altars of the mountain snows flamed above crimson clouds, and at the birth of light, the ocean's horizon arose to ridge. The birds tempered the mating lake. All flowers a field of forest which unfold, which unclose, trembling their eyelids to the kiss of day, swinging their censers in the element with orient incense lit by the new ray, by the new day. Burn slow and inconsumably on scent, odor sighs up to the smiling airs, and in succession dew did continent, isle, ocean, and all the things that in them wear the form and character of mortal mold rise, as the sun their father rose, to bear their portion of the toil which he of old took as his own and then imposed on them. But I, whose thoughts, which must remain untold, had kept as wakeful as the stars that gem the cone of night, now they were laid asleep, stretched my faint limbs behind a hoary stem which an old chestnut flung athwart the steep of a green Apennine. Before me fled the night, behind me rose the day. The deep was at my feet and heaven above my head, when a strange trance upon my fancy grew, which was not slumber, for the shade it spread was so transparent that the scene came through as clear as when a veil of light is drawn over evening hills, they glimmer. And then I knew I had felt the freshness of the dawn as I sat upon that slope of loam. The freshness of the dawn bathed in the same cold dew my brow and hair as I sat upon that slope of dawn, and heard, as there, the birds, the fountains, and the ocean hold sweet talk and music through the enamored air. And then a vision on my brain was rolled, as in that trance of wondrous thought I lay. This was the tenor of my waking dream. Methought I sat beside a public way, thick strong of summer dust, and thick strong of summer dust, and a summer dust and a great stream of people numerous as gnats upon the evening gleam, all hasting onward, yet no one seemed to know whether they went or where they came or why they made one of the multitude. And so was born amid the crowd as through the sky one of the million leaves of summer's beer. Old age and youth, manhood and infancy, mixed in one mighty torrent, did appear, some fleeing from the things they feared, some seeking the object of another's fear, and some and others and others, as with steps towards the tomb, poured on the trodden worms that crawled beneath, and others, mournfully within the gloom of their own shadows. Within their own shadow walked, and called it death, and some fled from it as it were a ghost, half fainting in the affliction of vain breath, but more with motions which each other crossed, pursued, or shunned, the shadows which clouds threw, or birds within the noonday ether lost upon that path where flowers never grew, and weary with vain toil and faint for thirst, heard not the music which the fountain heard not the music which the fountain heard not the music whose melodious dew out of their mossy cells forever burst, nor felt the breeze which from the forest told of grassy paths and woodlawns interspersed with overarching elms, and caverns cold, and violet banks where sweet dreams brood. But they pursued their serious folly as of old, and as I gazed, methought that in the way the throng grew wilder as the woods of June, when the south wind shakes the extinguished day, and a cold glare intenser than the noon, but icy cold, obscured with blinding light the sun as he the stars. When the sunlit, like the young moon when on the sunlit limits of the night, her white shell trembles amid crimson air, doth came the herald. Doth came the herald of its coming. Doth as the herald of its coming. Doth as the herald of its coming bear. As the herald of its coming bear, the ghost of its dead mother, whose dim form bends in dark ether from her infant's chair. I missed. Cold glare intense, and then the noon at icy cold, the sun as the stars. Like the young moon when on the sunlit limits of the night, her white shell trembles amid crimson air, and whilst the sleeping tempest gathers might, doth as the herald of its coming bear. there came a chariot on the silent storm of its own rushing glory, and a form so sat within as one whose ears deformed beneath a dusky hood, and duplicate crouching within the shadow of a tomb, and over what seemed the head of a cloud-like crape was bent a dun and faint ethereal gloom, tempering the light. Upon the chariot beam, a Janus-visaged shadow did assume the guidance of that wonder-winged team. The shapes which drew it in thick lightnings were lost. I heard alone on the air-soft stream the music of their ever-moving wings. All the four facets of the charioteer had banded eyes, did a little prophet brings, speeding the van and blindness in the rear. Not then avail the beams which quench the sun, or that his banded eyes could pierce the veil of all that is, has been, or will be gone, or will be done. So ill was the car guided, but it passed with solemn speed majestically on. The crowd gave way, and I arose aghast, or seemed to rise, so mighty was the trance. And saw on the clouds' thunder blast the million with fierce song and maniac dance raging around. Such was the jubilee as when to greet some conqueror's advance, imperial Rome poured forth her living sea from Senate House and Forum and Theater. And freedom left those who upon the free had bound a yoke, which soon they stooped to bear, not wanting here the just similitude of a triumphal pageant for wherever. The chariot rolled, a captive multitude was driven. All those who grew old, all those who had grown old in action or in misery, all whose age was subdued by all who had grown old in power or in misery, all who had their age subdued by action or by suffering, and their hour was drained till its last sand by well or woe, so that the trunk outlived both fruit and flower. All those whose name must grow in fame or infamy till the great winter lay the shape and name of this green earth with them forever low. All but the sacred few who could not tame their spirit to the conquerors, and as soon as had touched the world with living flame, fled back like eagles to their native moon, or those who put aside the diadem of earthly thrones, or gems, were till the last one were there. As for those from Athens and Jerusalem, neither were mid the mighty captives seen, nor mid the ribald crowd that followed them, nor among those who fled before, fierce and obscene. The wild dance maddens in the van, and those who lead it fleet as shadows on the green, outspeed the chariot, and without repose mix with each other in tempestuous music and measure, to savage music, wilder as it grows. They tortured by their agonizing pleasures, outspun, convulsed, and on the rapid whirlwind spun by that fierce spirit whose unholy leisures was soothed by mischief since the world began. Flam back their heads and loose their streams of hair, maidens and youth. Near the streams of hair, and in their dance round her who dims the sun, maidens and youth throw their wild arms in air as their feet twinkle. They recede and now kindle invisibly, and as they glow like moths by light attracted and repelled, off to their bright distraction come and go. They're like two clouds into one veil impaled, that shake the mountains where the lightnings mingle and die in rain. Their fear is trapped which held their nature snaps, nor is the desolation single. Snaps. Before the shock ceased to tingle, one falls, and yet another in the path, senseless, nor is the desolation single. Yet before I can say where the chariot has passed them over, no other trace I find but that of foam after the ocean's wrath is spent upon the desert shore, behind all men and women foully disarrayed, limp in the dance, with limbs decayed, and strain to reach, with limbs decayed, limp in the dance, and strain with limbs decayed to reach the car of light which leaves them still further behind and deeper in the shade, but not the less, for impotence of will they will, although ghastly shadows interpose round them and round each other and fulfill their work. Back in the dust from which they rose, sink. Corruption veils them as they lie, and frost becomes the soul from within. Struck to my heart by this sad pageantry, half to myself I said, and what is this? Whose shape is that within the car? And why? When a voice replied, life. I turned anew. O heaven, have mercy of such wretchedness. That which I thought was an old root which grew to strange distortion out of the hillside, was indeed one of those deluded crew, and that the grass, which methought hung so wide and wide, was but his thin discolored hair, and that the holes which he so vainly sought to hide had been eyes. If thou canst dance, forbear to join the dance as I had so well forborne, said the grim feature of my thought aware. I will unfold that which to such deep disdain led me and my companions, and relate the progress of the pageant from the morn. If thirst of love has not by then abate, follow it, even though tonight, though unweary, like one with the weight of his own words, as staggered, he paused. Wearily he paused, and before he could resume I cried, first, who art thou? Before thy memory I feared, loved, hated, suffered, did and died. And if the spark with which heaven lit my spirit had been with purer sentiment supplied, now corruption would not thus much inherit of what once was also. If I have been extinguished, I think there is something of the also. Nor this disguise, nor this disguise, nor this disguise, nor this disguise stain that which ought to have disdained to wear it. If I have been extinguished, yet there rise 1,000 beacons from the spark I bore. And who are those chained to the car? And who are those chained to the car? The wise, the great, the unforgotten. The wise, the great, the unforgotten. They wore mitres and helmets and crowns or wreaths of light, the science of thought's empire over thought. Their lore taught them not this, to know themselves, their might should not repress the mystery within. For fain of truth, for morn of truth they feigned. Deep night caught them before evening. Who is he, with chin upon his breast and hands crossed upon his chain? The child of a fierce hour. He sought to win the world and lost all it did contain of greatness. His hope destroyed, and more of fame and peace than virtue self can gain, without the opportunity he bore, without the opportunity, without the opportunity which bore him on the eagle pinions to the peak from where 1,000 climbers have before fallen, as Napoleon fell. I felt my cheek alter to see the shadow pass away, whose grasp left the giant world so weak that every pygmy kicked it as it lay. I have to stop. And much I suffered, and much I grieved, to think why power and will in opposition rule our mortal day, and how God made irreconcilable the good and means of good. And for the grief, I have this, and for despair I have disdained my eyes' desire to fill with visions, with the spent vision of the times that were and scarce have ceased to be. Dust, thou behave. The spoilers spoiled. Dust, thou behave, replied my guide. The spoilers spoiled. Leopold, Frederick, and Kant spoiled them. Voltaire, Frederick and Kant, Catherine and Leopold, the anarch chiefs and demagogues and sage, who is the fresh world already, things as old for already things already old, for in the battle life and they did wage, she remained conqueror. I was overcome by my own sadness, by my own heart alone, whose neither age nor tears infamy, and now nor tomb could temper to its object. Let them pass, I cried. The world and its mysterious doom is not that much more glorious than it was my desire to worship those who drew new figures on its false and fragile glass as the old faded. Figures ever new rise on the bubble. Paint them as you may. We have thrown, as those before us threw, our shadows on it as it passed away. At mark, how chained to the triumphal chair, the mighty phantoms of the elder day. All that was mortal in great Plato there expiates the joy and woe his master knew not. The star, the star that ruled, his doom was far too fair. Life was long, the flower of heaven grew not. And life, where that flower of heaven grew not, conquered thy heart by love, and neither gold, nor age, nor pain, nor sloth, nor slavery can subdue not. Can subdue not. And nearby, look, the pair twain, the tutor and his pupil, whose dominion followed them as tamed as vulture on a chain. The world lost, the world was darkened beneath either pinion of him whom from the flock of conquerors fame singled out for her thunder-bearing minion. The other long outlived both woes and wars, and thrown the mind of man, the thought of man, and still has kept the jealous key, truth's jealous key, truth's jealous key, the jealous key of truth's eternal doors, the jealous key of truth, eternal doors. If Beacon's lightning spirit had not leaped, had not leaped, had not leaped, had not leaped. If Beacon's eagle spirit had not leaped like lightning out of darkness, he compelled the Proteus shape of nature as it slept to wake and guide him to the caves that held the treasure of the secret of its reign. See the great bards of elder day, their music will quell the passions of those who hear. Their living melody, the passions which they sung. See the great bards of elder time who quell the passions which they sung. By their strain they may be known. Their living melody, their living melody. Pure, the living melody tempers its own contagion to the vein of those infected with it. I have suffered from what I wrote of viler pain, so my words have seeds of misery, even as the deeds of others, not as theirs. Then he pointed to a company, where I quickly mid whom I quickly recognized the heirs of Caesar's crime from him to Constantine. The anarchies whose force and murderous snares had founded many a scepter-bearing line, and Gregory and John and spread the plague of gold and blood abroad, and many Gregory and John and men divine who rose like shadows between man and God, till that eclipse still hanging over heaven was worshipped by the world over which they strode for the true sun. It glimpsed or quenched for the true sun. It quenched. Their power was given, but to destroy. I am one of those who have created, even if it be a world of agony. A world of agony. Whence comes thou, and where goes thou? And how did thy course begin? I said, and why? Speak. And why? I'm sick. My eyes are sick. Speak, or my eyes are sick. My eyes are sick of this perpetual flow of people. My heart by one eternal thought. Speak. Who am I? I hardly seem to know. And how and by what paths I have been brought to this dread path. I know by mostly guess. And why this course, and why this should be, I hardly seem to know. But follow thou, and from spectator to actor or victim in this wretchedness, if that can be taught, then I may want to learn from thee. Now listen, in this April time, when all the forest tips began to burn, with kindling green touched by the azure climb of the young season. I was laid asleep. I was laid asleep beneath a mountain. I was laid asleep beneath a mountain which from unknown time yawned into a cavern high and deep, and from it came a gentle rivulet whose water like fresh air in its soft bend and its calm sweep, bent the soft grass in its calm sweep, bent the soft grass and kept forever wet, and kept forever wet the stems of the sweet flowers, and filled the grove with magic sounds, which he who hears must needs forget all the pleasure and all the pain, the hate, all hate and love, which they had experienced before that hour of rest. A sleeping mother would not dream of her only child who died upon the breast at eventide. A king would mourn no more the crown of which his brows were dispossessed when the sun lingered over his ocean's floor to grid his neighbor with new prosperity. With new prosperity. Thou would forget vainly to deplore ills which if ills would find no cure in thee, the thought of which no other sleep will quell, no other melody will blot the memory, so sweet and deep was the oblivious spell. If life had been before that hour of rest, the heaven I imagined, or the hell of this harsh day in which I wake to weep, I know not. I rose, and for a space, the scene of woods and waters seemed to keep, though it was now broad day, a gentle light. Now it was now broad day, a gentle trace of light, diviner that the common sun sheds on the common earth, and all the place was filled with sounds, was filled with music, with magic, was filled with magic sounds, woven into one oblivious melody, confusing scents amid the gliding waves. And shadows down, and as I looked, the bright omnipresence of the morning through the Orient cavern flowed, and the sun's image, radiantly intense, burned on the waters of the well that glowed like gold. And threaded all the forest's maze with winding paths of emerald fire. There stood amid the sun as he, amid the blaze of his own glory, on the trembling floor, on the vibrating floor, paved with flashing rays, a shape of light which one hand did fling dew on the earth as if it were the dawn, and the invisible rain did ever sing a silver melody, a silver music of the mossy lawn, and before me, on the dusky grass, Iris, her many-colored scarf, had drawn. In her right hand, she bore a crystal glass filled with bright nepenthe. The fierce splendor fell from her as she moved along the mass of the deep cavern, and with palms so tender their tread broke not the mirror of its billow. She glided along the stream. She glided along the river, and did bend her head under the deep mass, under the deep cavern, and like a willow, her fairest hair swept the bosom of the stream, swept the bosom of the stream that whispered with delight to be its pillow. As one enamored is upborne in dream, over lily-paven lakes, mid silver mist, a wondrous music. Over lily-paven lakes, amid silver mist, a wondrous music. So this shape might seem partly to tread the waves with feet which kissed the dancing foam, partly to glide along the air which roughened the moist amethyst of the faint morning beams that fell along among the trees, or the soft shadows of the trees, and her feet still moving ever to the ceaseless song of leaves and winds and waves and birds and bees and falling drops. To measure ever new, moved in a measure new, moved in a measure new. Yet sweet as on the summer evening breeze up from the lake, a shade of golden dew between two rocks, athwart the rising moon, dances in the wind where eagle never flew, and still her feet, no less than the sweet tune to which they moved, seemed as they moved to blot the mind of him, the thoughts of him who glared at them, and soon all that was seemed as it had never been, as if it had been naught, and all that gazer's mind was strewn beneath her feet like embers, and thought by thought she trampled its spark into the dust of death, as day on the threshold of the east treads out the lamps of night until the breath of darkness re-illumines even the least of heaven's living eyes. Like day she came and made the night a dream, and before she ceased to move as one between desire and shame, suspended, I said, if, as it doth seem, she comes from the realm of no name to the valley of eternal dream, of perpetual dream, show where I come and where I go, and why pass not along the passing stream. Rise and quench thy thirst, was her reply, and as one shut lily by the wand of dew's morning vital alchemy, I rose and bending at her sweet command, touched with faint lips the cup she raised, and suddenly my brain turned into sand, and where the first wave had more than half erased the track of deer from shore Labrador, and where there was the wolf of which they fled amazed, left visibly, leaves his stem visibly on the desert shore, until the second burst. So on my sight burst a new vision, never seen before, as the fair shape winged in the coming light, as veil by veil fell the silent splendor drops from Lucifer amid the chrysolite of sunrise, before it tinged the mountain tops, and as the presence of that fairest planet, although unseen, as felt by one who hopes his daily path will end as he began it, that his day's path will end as he began it. In that star's smile was light as like the scent of a jonquil when evening breezes fan it, or the soft note in which his dear lament the brushing shepherd breathes, or the caress which that turned his weary slumber in content. So knew it, so knew I, the shape, so knew I, in that light's severe excess, the presence of that shape, which on the stream moved as I moved, along the wilderness, more dimly than a day-appearing dream, the ghost of a forgotten form of sleep, a light of heaven, which half extinguished being. Hello. Through the sick day in which we wake to weep, glimmers forever lost, forever sought, forever lost. So did that shape, and its obscure tenor keep beside my path, as silent as a ghost, but the new vision and the cold bright car, whose solemn speed and stunning music crossed the forest, and as if from some dread war triumphantly returning, the loud million fiercely extolled the fortune of her star, a moving arch of victory, the vermilion and green and azure plums of iris had built upon the high wind pavilion, her winged pavilion, built high over her winged pavilion, and underneath the ethereal glory clad, the tempest, the wilderness, and far below her flew the tempest of the splendor which forbade shadows to fall from leaf and stone. The crew seemed in that light like atomies to dance within a sunbeam, some upon the new embroidery of flowers which did enhance the grassy vesture of the desert, some played, forgetful of the chariot's swift advance, some others stood gazing till within the shade of the great mountain its light left them dim, others outspeeded it, and others made circles around it like the clouds that swim round the high moon in a sea of air, in a bright sea of air, and more did follow with exalting him the chariot and the captives fettered there, but all like bubbles on the eddying flood fell in the same trap at last, and were borne onward. I among the multitude was swept. Me, the sweetest flowers delayed not long. Me, not the phantom nor the solitude. Me, not the falling streams Lethean song, me, not the phantom of that early form which moved upon its motion, but among the thickest billows of that living storm, I plunged and bared my bosom to the climb, and that whose of that cold light, whose air too soon deform, before the chariot had begun to climb the opposing steep of that mysterious dell. Behold, a story worthy of the rhyme of him who from the lowest depth of hell love led serene through every paradise and all the glory. Love led serene, and he returned to tell the mysterious story, and to tell with words of hate and awe the wondrous story, how all things are transfigured except love, as death. For death is as a seed which wraths makes hoary. The world can hear not the sweet notes that move the sphere, whose lightest melody to lovers of wonder worthy of his rhyme. The grove grew dense with shadows to its inmost covers. The earth was grey with phantoms, and the air was peopled with shadows, with dim forms, as when there hovers a flock of vampires' bats before evening, before the glare of the tropic sun, before evening, strange night. On the bringing before evening, strange night upon some Indian isle. Thus were phantoms diffused around, and some did fling shadows of shadows, yet unlike themselves behind them. Some, like eaglets on the wing, were lost in the white day, and others like elves danced in 1,000 shapes on the grassy shelves, upon the sun, in 1,000 unimagined shapes upon the sunny streams and grassy shelves, and others like restless apes, and others sat chattering like restless apes on vulgar hands, over shoulders slipped, and others made a cradle of the ermine capes of kingly mantles, and some sat across the tier of pontiffs, and others across the tier of pontiffs sat like vultures, and others played under the crown which girt with empire under the crown, and others played under the crown which girt with empire, a baby's or an idiot's brow and made their nest in it. The old anatomies sat hatching their bare broods under the shade of demon wings, which laughed from their dead eyes to reassume the delegated power arrayed, in which those worms did monarchize the earth, who made the earth their charnel, did monarchize, who made the earth their charnel. Others more humble, like falcons, sat on the fist of common men, and round their heads did soar, like small gnats out of flies as thick as mist, upon mist on evening marshes, throned around the brow of lawyer statements, priest and theorist, and others like discolored flakes of snow on fairest bosoms and sunniest hairs, fairest bosom and the sunniest hair fell and were melted by the youthful glow, which they extinguished, and like tears they wore a veil to those from whose faint lids they rained in drops of sorrow. I became aware of whence those form proceeded which they stained the track in which we moved after brief space. From every form the beauty slowly waned, from every firmest limb and fairest face, the freshness, the strength and freshness fell like dust and left the action and the shape without the grace of life. The marble brow of youth was cleft with care, and in those eyes where once hope shone, desire, like a bereft lioness of her last cub, glared before it died. Each one of the great crowd sent forth incessantly the shadows, numerous as the dead leaves blown in autumn evening from a poplar tree. Each like themselves and like each other were at first, but some distorted, seemed to be obscure clouds molded by the casual air of this stuff. The car's creative ray wrapped all the busy phantoms that were there, and the sun, as the sun shapes the clouds. Thus on the way mast after mast fell from the countenance and from all and form of all, and long before the day was all the joy which waked like heaven's gleam. The sleepers in the oblivious valley died, And some grew weary of the ghastly dance and fell as I have felt by the wayside, those soonest from whose forms most shadows passed, and least of strength and beauty did abide. Then what is life? I called, Judy replied, a Patrick in the right.